Welcome to another deep dive. We've got some fascinating listener-submitted material to explore today. It's a chapter from a book all about bird sex.
Oh, dude, sex.
Yeah, bird sex. And let me tell you, it gets pretty wild. I mean, are you ready to hear about ducks with corkscrew penises longer than their bodies?
I guess so.
Oh, it gets even crazier. Like, did you know female ducks have evolved their own special anatomy to counter those overzealous males?
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, it's like an evolutionary arms race going on down there.
That's incredible. Nature is full of surprises.
You said it! And that's just the beginning. We're also going to be diving into birds that mate for like over an hour.
Over an hour? Seriously?
Seriously. And we'll be exploring the fascinating world of avian same-sex partnerships.
There's so much about the natural world that we just don't think about.
Absolutely. I mean, we often think of bird sex as this quick and simple cloacal kiss, right?
Right, just a quick little, yeah.
But this book, it blows that whole idea out of the water.
It sounds like it.
Before we get into all the crazy variations, though, maybe we should start with the basics. What exactly is a cloaca?
Okay, so a cloaca, it's basically this one opening that birds have for both excretion and reproduction.
Oh, I see. So it's kind of like a multi-purpose.
Exactly. And here's the thing. Most birds, they don't actually have penises.
Really? So how does mating work?
Well, they basically just press their cloacas together, allows the male to transfer sperm to the female.
So wait, those ducks with the corkscrew penises we talked about, they're not the norm.
No, they're definitely an exception.
So are ducks like the only ones with
Ducks, geese, and swans. They're some of the few birds that have held onto the phallus from their reptilian ancestors.
So they're like throwbacks.
In a way, yeah. And in the case of mallards, that phallus has evolved into this amazingly long and intricate corkscrew shape.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. What's the evolutionary advantage of, well, having that?
Well, the book suggests it's tied to their mating behavior. You see, male mallards, they can get pretty aggressive. They'll often form these big groups and try to force themselves on females.
So that long corkscrew, it's like a way to guarantee fertilization in these kind of chaotic situations.
That's one theory. It could be that this shape helps them, navigate the female's anatomy in these less than ideal circumstances.
Sounds a bit unsettling, to be honest.
It definitely challenges our romanticized view of nature. But the animal kingdom, it doesn't always play by our rules. Sexual behavior, it's often driven by the need to, ensure survival of the genes.
Survival of the fittest, right. But I thought I read somewhere that female mallards, they're not just sitting ducks, so to speak. They've evolved their own defenses, haven't they?
Oh, absolutely. Female mallards, they've got incredibly complex reproductive tracts.
Complex how?
Well, for one, they spiral in the opposite direction of the male's penis.
Whoa.
Yeah. And they even have these little dead-end pockets that can, trap unwanted sperm.
So it's not just about the males dominating, it's about the females maintaining some control over, over who fertilizes their eggs.
Exactly. It really highlights the female's agency in the whole reproductive process. And this dynamic, this back and forth, it's not unique to mallards. It happens across the animal kingdom. This constant adaptation between the sexes, that's one of the big takeaways from this book.
It makes you realize evolution is a lot more complicated than we often think, huh? Speaking of complexity, this book mentions all this variation in how long birds mate. It's not all just quick colloquial kisses. Some birds, they can go at it for over 30 minutes.
Over 30 minutes.
Yeah. Why such a huge difference?
A lot of factors. Let's take birds of prey, for example, like goshawks.
Okay.
They mate multiple times, even hundreds of times, for just a single clutch of eggs.
Hundreds. Why so many?
Well, think about it. If a female mates with multiple males, the male wants to make sure his sperm is the one that fertilizes the eggs. Frequent mating, it increases his chances.
Makes sense. It's like a numbers game.
You can say that. It's another example of how behavior, even something like how often they mate, is shaped by this drive to pass on those genes.
So we've got duration, but location can get pretty wild, too. It's not all just a cozy nest, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Oxpeckers, for instance, have been observed mating on the backs of African buffalo.
On a buffalo's back. That's a new one.
And then there's the common swift, can actually mate in flight.
Wait, in flight?
Air.
That's insane. How do they even...
Common swifts, they spend almost their entire lives in the air. It makes sense that they would, adapt their mating behavior to that lifestyle.
Well, I guess it's more romantic than mating on a buffalo's back. So you've got birds mating for ridiculously long periods, birds mating in midair. What else?
Well, not all birds are so exhibitionist, I guess you could say. The book talks about this bird called the Arabian babbler. Goes to great lengths to keep its mating activities under wraps.
Oh, interesting. Like they're embarrassed.
More like secretive.
Tell me about these secretive birds. So they're like the ninjas of the bird world. Why so secretive, though? What's the evolutionary advantage of, keeping your sex life under wraps?
It's a good question. And the book, it explores a few possibilities. Like in some species, subordinate males, they might conceal mating to avoid conflict with the dominant males.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't seem to be the case with the Arabian babblers.
No.
Nope. Even the dominant pairs, they go to great lengths to be discreet.
So it's not about fear or dominance. What's the book's theory? Why do they do it?
Well, one theory is that it helps to maintain harmony within the group.
Harmony.
Yeah, social harmony.
Yeah.
Arabian babblers, they live in these cooperative breeding groups where helpers assist in raising the young. So keeping mating, under wraps, it might reduce tension, jealousy among those helpers that aren't reproducing.
Makes sense. Less drama, more focus on raising the chicks.
Right. And the methods they use to arrange these secret rendezvous, they're incredible. Like they have this whole system of signals. Yeah, using ordinary objects like twigs or even eggshells to communicate their intentions.
So it's like a secret code.
Pretty much. It's like they're playing avian espionage, using decoys and signals to sneak away unnoticed.
I never would imagine birds being so sneaky. Does the book talk about the cognitive abilities involved in that?
It does. It suggests a pretty advanced level of tactical deception, perspective taking. They have to understand where others are looking, predict their movements, and time their signals perfectly.
Wow, that's pretty impressive for a bird. So we've got birds with crazy anatomy, birds that can mate in midair, and now birds that are basically master spies. What else does this book have in store?
Well, there's one more topic we need to talk about.
Hey.
And it's a bit sensitive but scientifically significant.
Okay.
The book, it tells the story of this explorer, George Murray Leavick, who studied Adelie penguins back in the early 20th century. And he was shocked by some of the things he saw,
Like what?
particularly interactions with dead birds and what he perceived as same-sex interactions.
It sounds like Leavick was looking at things through a very different lens than we do today. How does the book address that?
It acknowledges that, yeah, Leavick was working within the social and moral framework of his time, which heavily influenced his interpretation of these behaviors.
Yeah.
What he saw as shocking, we now understand as part of a much broader spectrum of animal behavior.
So what he called necrophilia, for example, that might have a different explanation now.
Exactly. Scientists now, they referred to this behavior as Davian behavior,
Mm-hmm.
thought to be triggered by hormonal responses to alarm calls or specific postures.
So it's not the same thing as necrophilia in humans.
Right. It's likely driven by very different factors.
That makes sense. And what about the same-sex interactions that he observed?
Well, that's another area where our understanding has evolved. We know now that same-sex behavior is widespread in the animal kingdom.
Widespread? Like how
It's
widespread?
documented in over 130 bird species alone.
Wow, I had no idea. What are some examples that the book covers?
Well, it highlights several compelling cases. Western gulls, for example. They often form long-term same-sex bonds. And liaison albatrosses, where females will sometimes pair up and raise chicks together. There's even these heartwarming stories of same-sex penguin couples that have successfully raised chicks in captivity.
It's amazing how diverse animal behavior can be.
It really is. And it challenges our assumptions about what's natural, opens up new ways of understanding the world around us.
It makes you wonder if, we're more similar to these feathered creatures than we realize.
It's possible.
Mm.
And the book really emphasizes that we shouldn't try to interpret these behaviors solely through a human lens. Same-sex behavior in birds, like other avian sexual behaviors, it likely serves a variety of purposes. Depends on the species and the context.
So it's not necessarily about love in the human sense of the word.
It might be in some cases,
Hmm.
but it could also be about, practice, social bonding, dominance displays, or even ensuring reproductive success in challenging environments where finding an opposite-sex partner might be difficult.
It sounds like there's still a lot we don't know about the motivations and functions behind these behaviors.
Oh, absolutely. There's always more to learn.
This deep dive has really made me rethink my assumptions about bird sex. It's way more complicated and fascinating than I ever imagined.
It really is. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's still so much we don't know about avian mating strategies.
We've covered duck penises, secretive babblers, penguin necrophilia, same-sex parenting, And a whole lot more. I feel like we've only scratched the surface.
We have, and that's what makes this field of study so exciting. There's always more to learn, and the insights we gain from studying animal behavior, it can shed light on our own species as well.
Before we wrap up, is there one key takeaway from the book that you think really stands out?
I think what really struck me is how the book changes how we think about sex in the animal world.
Uh-huh.
Like, we tend to think it's all about reproduction, right?
Right.
But then you see these behaviors like same-sex pairings or those really elaborate mating rituals some birds do, and it makes you realize it's not that simple.
It's like we try to fit animal behavior into these neat little boxes, but it just doesn't work that way.
Exactly. This whole exploration of bird sex, it kind of makes us ask bigger questions about the nature of sex itself, not just in birds, but across species, even our own.
It makes you wonder, are we really that different from these birds? I mean, could studying your behavior, their mating strategies, could that actually tell us something about humans?
Now, that's a fascinating question, and more researchers are starting to explore that, looking at the evolutionary roots of human behavior, comparing us to other species, seeing what's similar, what's different.
So are we saying that, like, love is love even in the bird world? Those same-sex penguin couples raising chicks? It's hard not to see a parallel to human relationships.
It's easy to make those comparisons, but we have to remember that different species experience the world in different ways.
True.
What we can say is that the animal kingdom, birds included, shows us that sexual behavior, it goes beyond just making babies.
It definitely seems like we still have a lot to learn about why these animals do what they do.
Oh, for sure. There's always something new to discover. And that's what makes this field of study so exciting. We're always learning, always revising our understanding. This deep dive, it really highlighted that.
I'm definitely walking away with a whole new appreciation for just how complex and diverse bird mating strategies are. Before we started, I thought it was all pretty straightforward, but from duck penises to secretive babblers, this has been quite the journey.
It has been. It really shows you how important it is to approach nature with curiosity and open mind. There's always something new to learn.
Well, on that note, a huge thank you to you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of bird sex. We've learned that nature is full of surprises and that there's always more to uncover if we're willing to look beyond our assumptions.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Keep exploring, keep questioning,
Yeah.
and keep being amazed by the natural world.
Until next time, happy birding!